I love everything vintage, antique, and well-used, and so does our guest. I am with Wendy, and she is the owner of Remedy Vintage, and she's here to teach us some ways to use those vintage items and repurpose them into home decor. Wendy, tell us what Remedy Vintage is all about.
Really, it is a means of repurposing and reusing vintage items, sourcing them and fixing them and making them functional and beautiful. And so that's what we do.
And it's so cool because there's really a big trend in that repurposing of old things and making them new again. How did you get into it?
You know, I've always loved vintage, and from the time I was young, I always loved vintage clothes, pulled them out of my mom's closet, and I always have used vintage in my home. And so this became a business opportunity to have really a creative outlet for me.
Why do you think that people are now interested in these reused items?
For me, I think for myself decorating, I love the feeling that it brings. It has sometimes a nostalgia with the item, a sentiment with the item. We live in homes that are really builder grade and manufactured homes, so it brings in a level of character and texture to a home that I think just is a different approach to home decor that I think people are really responding to because of the uniqueness of the pieces that they bring in and not have it thrown away, because a lot of times these things are just discarded.
Yeah.
So taking it, repurposing it into a beautiful piece that that has character and interest and a story too. I love the stories. The stories attached to these items are the best part.
And sometimes when you find a unique vintage or antique item, you kind of see they write a little bit of the story on the back of it because it's so dated.
Yeah, the books are my favorite thing because when you go through these books and you'll see handwriting and just even the ink that was used in the pen, it's just, you can't find that anywhere. So I love that part.
And talk a little bit about the difference between vintage versus antique, because I think we get that confused a lot.
Yeah, it becomes an interchangeable word that the one thing doesn't always mean the other. An antique, really loosely what's accepted, is something that's over 100 years old.
Oh wow.
So we use antique many times. It really is a vintage item. Vintage is 50 years and older. Oh. Now when you deal with clothing, sometimes within 20 years can be considered vintage, but really loosely between 100 and 50 years is something vintage. But you hear that word, something that is just old, they'll call it antique, but it's not always an antique.
You have some great examples here on the table. Talk me through some of these because I'm loving this piece right here.
Yeah, this had a piece of salvage that I found that was an old door that I love the shape of it. It was super unique, and this is old ceiling tin. So whether to call it antique or vintage is hard to say. This would be a repurposed item. So I would say a vintage tin, and then I attach it to the back, and now you can use it for a message board. That's one of my favorites. I love that one.
That's really cool, and I'm loving this too. This is a level.
So it's a level, so an old level, probably not super, super old, but it has really nice brass detail. I love things that have patina and age and wear and character to them. So we add some hooks. So we hang our jackets. So this is something that is purposeful rather than, because nowadays everybody's using electronic things even for leveling. They're not even pulling out something that's a tangible thing. So it's a reminder of like days gone past of what things were used and how they were used, and it's just kind of a neat reminder to repurpose it.
And it doesn't always have to be a big item. It can be little home decor things too.
Yes. So I love you put a plant in it is pretty much my mantra for life. So like, Crocs, little milk glass, all of the items that you can see putting some plants in it just to make a purpose for it. Like you see something that has some character interest. I use those all the time, and I love flower frogs. Those are like my favorite go-to. So I have like a green one up there that's an interesting shape. They're great for kids' artwork. You can put cards in them. You can put family pictures in them. And they were used to actually put flowers into the vase for the floral arrangements, and now we can use them for something else. Flower frogs are my favorite.
I mean, if this doesn't give you inspiration, I don't know what does, but you're gonna stick around, come back a little bit later on in the show. Wendy is gonna show us how to repurpose some old books. That's gonna be fun. Get more videos like this one by subscribing right here.